The stars stretched endlessly beyond the bridge windows of the UES Nightborne. Captain Jake Morrison stood with his hands behind his back, watching the distant lights of the outer rim colonies. The ship moved silently through space, its massive HULL cutting through the darkness like a sleeping giant dot. It was the year 2387, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Coalition for almost 100 years. The Nightborne was their pride, a dreadnought-class vessel that carried the most advanced weapons Earth had ever built. But in all its years of service, those weapons had never fired in anger. Peace had ruled the galaxy for decades. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Deep Space Station 7, said Lieutenant Commander Lisa Carter from her position at the tactical console. Her voice carried a tension that made Morrison turn around. "Put it through," he ordered, moving to his command chair. The main screen flickered to life, showing the worried face of Commander Ryan Brooks, who was currently stationed at the monitoring outpost. Static filled the transmission, making his words hard to hear. "Captain Morrison, we have a situation. 3 outer colonies have gone dark in the past week. No distress signals, no final transmissions, just ... silence." Morrison felt a cold feeling in his stomach. "Equipment failure?" "Negative, sir. We sent probe ships to investigate. What they found..." Brooks paused, his face growing pale. "The colonies are gone. Not destroyed, not evacuated, gone as if they never existed." The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. Lieutenant Amy Walsh, the communications officer, leaned forward in her seat. "Gone? What do you mean, gone?" "The buildings, the people, even the plants and animals. Everything living has been removed. The planets are still there, but they're empty. Dead rock floating in space." Morrison's jaw tightened. In nearly a century of galactic peace, nothing like this had ever happened. "Any idea who's responsible?" "Unknown, sir, but the attack patterns suggest a coordinated strike. Someone with advanced technology and detailed knowledge of our colony locations." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in uncomfortable silence. Morrison looked at his crew, seeing the same concern in their eyes that he felt in his heart. "Carter, what's our current position?" "We're 3 days out from the Kepler 442 system, sir." "The Coalition Council has called an emergency session." Morrison nodded. The council was dominated by the Zilani, a peaceful species that had helped create the Coalition's diplomatic approach to problem-solving. They believed every conflict could be resolved through negotiation and understanding. "Sir," interrupted Dr. Nathan Ross, the ship's xenobiologist, as he entered the bridge. "I've been analyzing the data from the probe ships. Whatever did this, it's not random destruction. The biological matter wasn't destroyed, it was harvested." "Harvested?" Morrison asked. "Removed systematically. Every living cell, every organic compound, someone took everything that was alive and left the rest untouched." Chief Engineer Kelly Adams looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures on long-range sensors. Something big is moving through the outer territories." Morrison felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders. "How big?" "Fleet size, sir, maybe larger." "The signatures don't match any known Coalition technology." The captain moved to the center of the bridge, his mind racing. "Carter, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we need to know everything about recent activity in the Outer Rim. Adams, boost our sensor, I want to know what's out there." "Sir," Walsh said quietly, "I'm receiving reports from other monitoring stations. 7 more colonies have gone silent." The bridge fell quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Morrison had trained for combat, but the Coalition had existed in peace for so long that many of his crew had never seen real action. "Captain," Carter said, her voice steady despite the situation, "the Coalition Council is refusing to authorize military action. They're sending a diplomatic mission to establish contact with whatever is doing this." Morrison closed his eyes for a moment. The Zilani's faith in diplomacy was admirable, but sometimes it was also dangerous. "How long until the diplomatic mission reaches the Outer Rim?" 4 days, sir." "And how long until we reach the council chambers?" 2 days. Morrison made his decision. Change course. Set a direct path for the Outer Rim territories. We're going to investigate this ourselves. Sir, Carter said carefully, that's outside our current mission parameters. Our mission is to protect Coalition citizens. Right now that means finding out what's happening to our colonies. Morrison looked at his crew. I have a bad feeling about this diplomatic mission. As the Nightborne changed course, Dr. Ross continued studying the data from the dead colonies. Captain, I think I know what we're dealing with. The harvesting patterns suggest this isn't random violence. Someone needs our biological resources to survive. You mean they single quotes eating our colonies? Not eating, absorbing, taking everything organic and leaving only the inorganic materials behind. This suggests a species that requires biological matter from other worlds to maintain their own existence. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. A species that has to consume other life forms to survive? Exactly. And if they're targeting our colonies specifically, it means they've been studying us. They know where we are, what we have, and how to take it. The ship's alarm suddenly began to sound. Adams looked up from her console with wide eyes. Captain, I'm detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the Outer Rim. Multiple contacts moving at high speed toward Coalition space. Morrison gripped the arms of his chair. How many? Hundreds, sir, maybe thousands. They're heading straight for the core worlds. The captain stood up, his voice calm despite the situation. All hands, this is Captain Morrison. We are approaching an unknown threat in the Outer Rim territories. All departments, prepare for possible combat operations. Carter looked at him with concern. Sir, the Nightborne has never been in actual combat. Our crew is trained, but we've never faced a real enemy. Morrison nodded grimly. Then it's time we learned. Whatever's out there has been planning this for a long time. They've studied our defenses, our locations, our weaknesses, but they may have underestimated one thing. What's that, sir? Humanity's ability to adapt when threatened. Morrison looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere in that darkness an enemy was approaching that could change everything. Set condition yellow throughout the ship. If diplomacy fails, we need to be ready for whatever comes next. The Nightborne continued its course toward the Outer Rim, carrying its crew toward a destiny none of them could have imagined. The age of peace was ending, and the age of war was about to begin. Behind them, the last reports from the monitoring stations painted a terrifying picture. The unknown enemy was not just destroying colonies. They were consuming entire worlds, leaving nothing but empty planets in their wake, and Earth itself lay directly in their path. The emergency transmission reached the Nightborne just as they entered the Outer Rim territories. Captain Jake Morrison watched the main screen with growing horror as the reports came in. 3 major Coalition worlds had been attacked simultaneously. The coordinated strike had caught everyone off guard. Captain, we're receiving distress signals from New Geneva, Kepler Prime, and the Arcturus colonies, Lieutenant Amy Walsh reported, her voice shaking. All 3 systems are under heavy assault. Morrison gripped his chair tighter. What about the diplomatic mission? The Zilani fleet reached the contact zone 2 hours ago, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Carter said quietly. We lost contact with them immediately. Long-range sensors showed ... debris. The bridge fell silent. The diplomatic mission had been completely destroyed. Every ship, every crew member, every hope for peaceful resolution had been eliminated in minutes. Chief Engineer Kelly Adams looked up from her console with pale face. Captain, I'm boosting our sensor array to maximum range. You need to see this. The main screen changed to show a tactical display of Coalition space. Hundreds of red dots were moving through the outer territories, each one representing an enemy vessel. The formation was perfect, too perfect for a random attack. They know exactly where our worlds are, Dr. Nathan Ross said from his position near the science station. Look at the attack patterns. They're not exploring or searching. They're going directly to every major population center. Morrison studied the display with growing dread. How is that possible? They've been watching us for years, maybe decades, learning our trade routes, our colony locations, our defense patterns. This isn't an invasion. It's an extermination. Commander Ryan Brooks appeared on the communication screen from Deep Space Station 7. His face was covered in sweat and dirt. Captain Morrison, we're under attack. The station's defenses are failing, these things. They're not just destroying our colonies, they're consuming them. Consuming them? Morrison asked. The planets themselves. After they kill everything. Living, they do something to the atmosphere. Within hours, the entire biosphere is gone. The oceans dry up, the air becomes toxic, and the ground turns to ash. The transmission cut to static. Deep Space Station 7 was gone. Captain, Carter said urgently, I'm receiving emergency communications from across Coalition space. The other member species are in panic. The Zilani government has collapsed completely. The Rigelian fleet is retreating to their home system. The Centauri are abandoning their outer colonies. Morrison felt his heart sink. The coalition had been built on the idea that different species could work together for mutual protection. Now, when faced with a real threat, it was falling apart. Sir, Adams called out, I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout coalition space. The enemy fleet is spreading out, attacking multiple systems simultaneously. Dr. Ross moved to the captain's side. Jake, I've been analyzing the energy patterns from the attacks. Whatever these creatures are, they're not just invading for territory. They're terraforming the worlds they conquer in real time. Terraforming? Changing the planetary environment to suit their needs. But the process kills everything that was there before. Every plant, every animal, every microorganism. They're not just taking our worlds, they're making them uninhabitable for us. Morrison looked at the tactical display again. The red dots were moving steadily toward the core worlds of the coalition, toward Earth itself. How long until they reach Earth? He asked quietly. Carter checked her calculations. At their current speed, approximately 6 months, sir, 6 months. Morrison closed his eyes for a moment. 6 months to figure out how to stop an enemy that had been planning this attack for decades? Captain, Walsh interrupted, I'm receiving a coalition-wide transmission. It's from Admiral Patricia Wells aboard the UES Valiant. Admiral Wells appeared. On the screen, she was in her battle armor, and the bridge behind her showed signs of combat damage. All coalition vessels, this is Admiral Wells. The enemy has been identified as the Vexhai Empire. They are not interested in negotiation or surrender. They are consuming entire worlds to fuel their expansion. She paused, looking directly at the camera. The Coalition Council has been evacuated from the capital. Each member species is now responsible for defending their own territory. Earth Command is activating all reserve fleets. This is not a drill. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. The Coalition, humanity's hope for a peaceful future among the stars, had effectively ceased to exist. Captain, Carter said softly, what are our orders? Morrison looked at his crew. They were good people, trained for peacekeeping operations and scientific missions. Now they were facing a war that could destroy everything they had ever known. We continue to the outer rim, he said finally. We need to see what we're dealing with. Sir, Adams said, I'm detecting a massive energy signature approaching from the direction of the Vega system. It's bigger than anything we've seen. The main screen showed a sight that made everyone on the bridge gasp. An enormous ship, the size of a small moon, was moving through space surrounded by dozens of smaller vessels. The hull was dark and organic-looking, covered in what appeared to be living tissue. My God, Dr. Ross whispered. It's a living ship. Captain, Walsh said urgently, I'm receiving a transmission from that vessel. It's trying to communicate. Morrison straightened in his chair, put it through. The screen filled with an image that would haunt his dreams for years to come. The creature was tall and skeletal, with multiple arms ending in sharp claws. Its skin was gray and translucent, showing dark organs beneath. But it was the eyes that were most disturbing. They were completely black without any trace of emotion or mercy. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding metal. We are the HFY. Your species has been selected for harvest. Your worlds will feed our children. Your resistance will only prolong your suffering, Morrison found his voice. We are Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Nightborne. We represent the Galactic Coalition. We are prepared to discuss terms for coexistence. The creature made a sound that might have been laughter. There are no terms, there is only harvest. Your coalition has already fallen. Your ships flee before. Just like frightened animals. Soon, your homeworlds will be empty, and we will make them our own. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in shocked silence. Captain, Carter said quietly, our sensors are showing movement throughout the outer rim. The HFY fleet is regrouping for a major assault. Morrison looked at the tactical display. The enemy was everywhere, moving with purpose and coordination that the coalition had never achieved. They had been preparing for this moment for years while humanity had grown soft in peacetime. All hands, this is Captain Morrison, he said over the ship's communication system. We are now at war. The enemy has shown us no mercy, and we can expect none. From this moment forward, we fight not just for the coalition, but for the survival of every living thing in the galaxy. He looked at his crew, seeing fear but also determination in their eyes. The age of peace is over. Now we learn what humanity is truly capable of when everything we love is threatened. The Nightborne continued deeper into enemy territory, carrying its crew toward a confrontation that would change the course of galactic history. The Kepler 442 system was a graveyard. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Nightborne, staring at the wreckage that had once been the Coalition's third fleet. Hundreds of ships floated dead in space, their hulls torn open and their crews gone. Captain, I'm detecting a faint life sign from the UES Valiant, Chief Engineer Kelly Adams reported. It's weak, but someone's alive over there, Morrison nodded grimly. Prepare a rescue team? Carter, you're with me. Brooks, maintain position and watch for enemy contacts. The rescue shuttle moved carefully through the debris field. Pieces of Coalition ships drifted past the windows like metal snow. Morrison had seen battle damage before in training simulations. But this was different. The destroyed vessels looked like they had been chewed apart by massive teeth. They found Admiral Patricia Wells in the Valiant's medical bay. Barely conscious and covered in bandages, Dr. Nathan Ross immediately began treating her wounds while Morrison waited for her to speak. Captain, she whispered, her voice barely audible. They're not just killing us, they're eating entire worlds. Morrison leaned closer. What do you mean? The HFY don't just conquer planets, they consume them. Everything living, everything organic. They strip the biosphere clean and leave nothing but dead rock behind. Wells grabbed Morrison's arm with surprising strength. I watched them do it to New Geneva. 3 billion people, gone in 72 hours. Dr. Ross looked up from his medical scanner. Admiral, you mentioned they consume the biosphere. Are you talking about some kind of terraforming process? Wells shook her head weakly. No, they literally eat it. The planets, the oceans, the atmosphere. They have these massive ships that land on the surface and extend roots into the ground. Within hours, everything starts dying. Morrison felt his blood run cold. How many worlds have they taken? 17 so far, maybe more by now. The process is getting faster each time, like they're learning how to do it more efficiently. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Carter appeared on the shuttle's communication screen. Captain, we're receiving distress calls from across the system. The surviving Coalition ships are scattered and requesting orders. Morrison looked at the tactical display. Ships from a dozen different species were floating helplessly in space, their crews traumatized by what they had witnessed. Many were civilian vessels that had been pressed into military service. How many ships do we have left? Morrison asked. 43 vessels, sir, but most of them are damaged and their crews are not in good condition. Morrison understood what she meant. The Coalition species had lived in peace for generations. They had never experienced the kind of horror that the HFY brought with them, Back on the Nightborne, Morrison called a meeting of the surviving ship commanders. The main conference room was filled with beings from across the galaxy, all looking lost and afraid. "We need to regroup and form a defensive line," Morrison began. "If we coordinate our efforts, we can slow their advance." A Zilani captain named Veltar shook his head. "Captain Morrison, you don't understand. These creatures are not like anything we've faced before. They don't just want to defeat us. They want to consume us." "Then we fight them," Morrison said. Firmly, a Regalian commander laughed bitterly. "Fight them? Captain, my ship fired everything we had at one of their vessels. Our weapons barely scratched the surface. Their ships are alive. They heal themselves." Dr. Ross entered the conference room carrying a data pad. "Captain, I've been analyzing the wreckage from the battle. The Vexi ships are indeed biological, but they're not just alive, they're hungry." "Hungry?" "Their ships are powered by consuming organic matter. Every time they destroy one of our vessels, they absorb the biological components. The crew, the food supplies, even the organic compounds in the ship's systems, they're literally feeding on us." The room fell silent. Morrison looked around at the faces of the coalition commanders and saw despair in their eyes. "Sir," Lieutenant Amy Walsh's voice came over the intercom, "I'm receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command." Morrison activated the main screen. Admiral Stephen Parker appeared, his face grim. "Captain Morrison, Earth has received your reports about the Vexi. The situation is worse than we thought." "How much worse?" Morrison asked. "Intelligence suggests they've been preparing for this invasion for decades. They've been studying our trade routes, our colony locations, our military capabilities. This isn't a random attack. It's a carefully planned extermination." Morrison felt the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. "What are our orders, sir?" "Continue gathering intelligence on the enemy. We need to know how they operate, what their weaknesses are. The survival of humanity may depend on what you learn." The transmission ended, leaving Morrison alone with the coalition commanders. The Zilani captain, Veltar, stood up slowly. "Captain Morrison, I must inform you that the Zilani High Council has decided to withdraw from the war. We are evacuating our remaining colonies and retreating to our home system." One by one, the other commanders made similar announcements. The Regalians, the Centauri, the Altarians, all of them were abandoning the fight and retreating to their homeworlds. Within an hour, Morrison found himself commanding a force of only 12 ships, all of them human vessels. "Captain," Carter said quietly, "what do we do now?" Morrison looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere in that darkness, the Vexi were continuing their advance toward Earth. "We do what humans have always done when faced with extinction. We adapt, we learn, and we fight." Major Danny Foster, the Nightborne's Marine commander, entered the bridge. "Captain, I've been reviewing the battle footage from the Third Fleet. Engagement, the Vexi aren't just superior in numbers. They're superior in tactics. They knew exactly how the coalition would respond." "What do you mean?" Morrison asked. "They've been studying us for years. They know our standard battle formations, our communication protocols, our weapon systems. They've planned counters for everything we might do," Dr. Ross nodded grimly. "Which explains why they targeted human colonies first. They recognize us as the biggest military threat in the coalition." Morrison realized the truth with growing horror. They're not just invading. They're eliminating threats in order of priority. Human colonies first, then the other military species, then the civilian populations. "Captain," Walsh called out urgently, "I'm detecting multiple Vexi signatures approaching the system. Large formation, moving at high speed." Morrison moved to his command chair. "All ships, this is Captain Morrison. The enemy is approaching. We're going to make our stand here." "Sir," Carter said quietly, 12 ships against an entire fleet. The odds are impossible." Morrison looked at his crew, seeing fear but also determination in their eyes. "The odds have never stopped humanity before. We may not win this battle, but we're going to make sure they remember what it costs to fight us." The Vexi fleet entered. The system like a dark tide, hundreds of organic ships moving with predatory grace. Morrison watched them approach, knowing that this moment would determine whether humanity would survive or join the billions who had already been consumed. "All ships, engage at will," Morrison ordered. "Show them what humanity is made of." The battle began, and space filled with the light of weapons fire and the screams of dying ships. Captain Jake Morrison stood in his ready room, staring at the classified files that had just arrived from Earth Command. The authorization codes were ones he had never seen before, marked with warnings that made his hands shake as he read them. Protocol. Omega. The name alone sent chills through his body. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Carter entered the room without knocking, her face pale. "Captain, we've lost contact with the Mars colonies. The Vexi reached them 6 hours ago." Morrison looked up from the files. "How long until they reach Earth?" 4 months, sir. "Maybe less if they continue accelerating their advance." Morrison made a decision that would change everything. He activated his command console and entered the authorization codes for Protocol Omega. The screen flashed red 3 times before accepting the codes. "Captain," Carter said quietly, "what is Protocol Omega?" Morrison turned to face her. "It's what humanity does when the coalition fails. When diplomacy ends and survival begins." The main screen in Morrison's ready room came to life, showing the face of Admiral Stephen Parker. But he wasn't aboard a coalition vessel. Behind him, Morrison could see the bridge of a ship he had never seen before. "Captain Morrison, Protocol Omega is now active. You are hereby authorized to act independently of all coalition directives. The survival of humanity is now your only priority." Morrison felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders like a heavy cloak. "Admiral, what are our resources?" "More than the coalition ever knew about. For the past 50 years, humanity has been preparing for this exact scenario. We've been building ships, training crews, and developing weapons in secret." The screen changed to show a massive space station hidden in the asteroid belt. Ships were moving in and out of the station's docking bays, but these weren't the peaceful exploration vessels that humanity had shown the coalition. These were warships built for one purpose only. "Captain," Admiral Parker continued, "meet the human defense fleet. While the coalition believed in peace, we believed in being prepared." Morrison watched in amazement as the hidden fleet assembled. There were hundreds of ships, all of them designed for combat. Destroyers, cruisers, and massive dreadnoughts that made the Nightborne look small. "Sir," Carter whispered, "how long has this been going on?" "Since the day we joined the coalition," Admiral Parker replied. "We learned from human history that peace is only possible when you're strong enough to defend it. The other species forgot that lesson. We never did." Commander Tony Garcia, the ship's intelligence officer, entered the ready room carrying a data pad. "Captain, I've been analyzing the intelligence reports from Earth Command. The situation is worse than we thought, but also better." Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "The Vexi have been studying the coalition for decades, learning our weaknesses and preparing countermeasures. But they've been studying the wrong humans." "What do you mean?" Carter asked. Garcia activated his datapad showing tactical displays. "They've been watching our diplomatic vessels, our exploration ships, our peacekeeping forces. They have no idea what humanity is really capable of when we're fighting for our lives." Morrison understood. "They think we're like the other coalition? Species, peaceful, soft, unprepared for real war." "Exactly. But humanity has been preparing for this moment since we first looked at the stars and wondered what else might be out there." The door chimed, and Major Danny Foster entered with several of his Marines. "Captain, we've received new orders from Earth Command. We're to rendezvous with the main fleet at coordinates that don't appear on any coalition star charts." Morrison looked at the coordinates and felt a surge of pride. "Those are the coordinates for Firebase Alpha, one of our hidden military bases." 3 days later, the Nightborne arrived at Firebase Alpha to find a sight that took Morrison's breath away. The hidden base was enormous, built into a massive asteroid that had been hollowed out over decades. Hundreds of human warships surrounded the base, their hulls gleaming with weapons that the coalition had never seen. "Captain," Carter said with awe in her voice, "some of these ships are twice the size of coalition dreadnoughts." Morrison nodded as he watched the fleet assemble. The Coalition wanted explorers and diplomats. Humanity gave them that. But we never stopped being warriors. The main screen activated, showing Admiral Parker aboard the UES Retribution, a massive battleship that served as the fleet's flagship. Captain Morrison, welcome to the real human fleet. Admiral, what's our mission? To do what the Coalition never could. To show the Vex-High that humanity doesn't surrender, doesn't retreat, and doesn't negotiate when our survival is at stake. Dr. Nathan Ross appeared on the bridge, carrying data from his analysis of the Vex-High technology. Captain, I've discovered something important about their biology. They're not just consuming our worlds for expansion, they're dying. Morrison turned to face him. Dying. Their home system is collapsing. Their sun is burning out, and their planets are becoming uninhabitable. They need our biospheres to survive. This isn't conquest, it's desperation. Admiral Parker's expression darkened, which makes them even more dangerous. A dying species with nothing to lose. Chief Engineer Kelly Adams looked up from her console. Captain, I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. The human fleet is powering up weapons I've never seen before. Morrison looked at the tactical display. The human fleet was arranging itself into a formation that would have been impossible for Coalition forces. Every ship knew exactly where to go. Every crew knew exactly what to do. Captain, Admiral Parker said, it's time to show the galaxy what humanity is really capable of. The Vex-High chose to make this a war of extinction. We're going to finish it. Lieutenant Amy Walsh received a transmission from Earth Command. Captain, we're receiving deployment orders. The fleet is being divided into strike groups. We're to lead the assault on the Vex-High forward positions. Morrison felt something he hadn't experienced since the war began. Hope, not just for survival, but for victory. All human vessels, this is Admiral Parker. For 50 years, we've prepared for this moment. The Coalition may have fallen, but humanity endures. We fight not just for ourselves, but for every species that the Vex-High would consume. The Admiral's voice carried across the fleet, reaching every human ship. They studied us, but they studied the wrong humanity. They saw our diplomats and our explorers. Now they're going to meet our warriors. Morrison looked at his crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that he felt in his heart. Carter, signal the fleet. The Nightborne is ready for combat operations. Captain, Foster said with a grim smile, the Marines are ready. We've been training for this our whole lives. Morrison nodded as he watched the massive human fleet prepare for battle. The Vex-High had made a fatal mistake. They had assumed that humanity's peaceful nature meant they were weak. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength had always been their ability to become whatever they needed to be to survive. All ships prepare for combat deployment. The real war begins now. The human fleet moved out of Firebase Alpha like a steel tide, carrying with them the hopes and fears of their entire species. The Vex-High had started a war of extinction. Humanity was going to finish it. The Battle of Proxima Station would be remembered as the day humanity showed the galaxy its true face. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Nightborne, watching as the human fleet approached the massive Vex-High formation. The enemy had expected another easy victory like those against the Coalition forces. They were about to be proven wrong. Captain, we have visual confirmation of the Vex-High mothership, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Carter reported. It's larger than our intelligence suggested. 15 kilometers long and covered in what appears to be living armor. Morrison studied the massive alien vessel on the main screen. It looked like a giant predator floating in space, its hull pulsing with dark energy. Smaller Vex-High ships surrounded it like parasites feeding on a host. Admiral Parker is signaling the fleet, Lieutenant Amy Walsh announced. The attack begins in 30 seconds. Morrison activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is Captain Morrison. In 30 seconds, we begin the first human offensive against the Vex-High. They have consumed 17 worlds and killed billions of innocent people. Today, we make them pay for every life they took. The human fleet moved into attack formation with precision that amazed even Morrison. Every ship knew exactly where to go. Every weapon system was perfectly coordinated. This was what 50 years of secret preparation had created. "Weapons are charged and ready, Captain," Carter reported. "Fire!" Morrison ordered. Space erupted in light as hundreds of human ships opened fire simultaneously. The Vexai had never faced anything like it. Their organic ships, which had easily absorbed coalition weapons, began to buckle under the concentrated assault. "Direct hits on multiple enemy vessels," Chief Engineer Kelly Adams called out. "Their living armor is regenerating, but not fast enough to keep up with our damage output." Morrison watched as Vexai ships began to break apart under the human assault. "They studied our old weapons. They have no defense against our new ones." The Vexai mothership turned toward the human fleet, its massive weapons beginning to charge. Morrison knew that one hit from that ship could destroy half their force. "Carter, prepare for evasive maneuvers." "Garcia, what's the status on our boarding pods?" Commander Tony Garcia looked up from his station. "Loaded and ready, Captain." "Major, Foster's Marines are standing by." Morrison made a decision that would define the battle. "We're going to board that mothership. If we can take out their command structure, the rest of their fleet will fall apart." "Sir," Carter said with concern, "that's incredibly dangerous. We don't know what's inside that ship." "Then we'll find out," Morrison replied. "Launch boarding pods. All ships provide covering fire." The Nightborne broke away from the main formation, racing toward the Vexai mothership. Behind them, the human fleet continued their assault, keeping the smaller enemy ships busy. "Boarding pods away," Garcia reported. "Major Foster and his Marines are en route to the target." Major Danny Foster watched through the viewport of his boarding pod as they approached the alien mothership. The hull was unlike anything he had ever seen, covered in what looked like black scales that moved and shifted like living skin. "All Marines, prepare for hostile contact," Foster said over the communication system. "We don't know what we're going to find in there, but whatever it is, we're going to eliminate it." The boarding pod struck the hull of the mothership and immediately began burning through the organic armor. Within seconds, Foster and his 12 Marines were inside the alien vessel. The interior was a nightmare. The walls pulsed with veins carrying dark fluid, and the air was thick with a smell that made the Marines gag. Everything was alive, breathing, watching them. "Stay together," Foster ordered as they moved deeper into the ship. "Watch for movement. These things could be anywhere." Sergeant Michelle Torres took point, her weapon ready. "Major, I'm detecting life signs ahead. Multiple contacts moving toward our position." The first Vexai they encountered was even more terrifying in person than on the transmission screens. It stood over 8 feet tall, with multiple arms ending in razor-sharp claws. Its black eyes showed no emotion, only hunger. "Open fire!" Foster shouted, the corridor filled with weapons fire as the Marines fought the alien creatures. The Vexai were fast and deadly, but they had never faced human soldiers before. Foster's Marines used tactics that confused and frustrated the enemy. "Torres, take your squad left. Wilson, go right." "We'll pin them in crossfire," Foster ordered. The Marines moved with practiced efficiency, using the alien ship's own corridors against its defenders. Within minutes, they had cleared the immediate area. "Major, I'm detecting a large chamber ahead," Torres reported. "Massive life signs, bigger than anything we've seen." They moved carefully toward the chamber, finding themselves in a vast space filled with organic machinery. At the center was something that made even the hardened Marines step back in shock. The Vexai Queen was enormous, her body connected to the ship itself by hundreds of tubes and cables. She was the ship's brain, its heart, its soul. And she was dying. "My God," Torres whispered. "She's connected to everything." Foster realized the truth. The ship isn't just alive. She is the ship. The Queen's black eyes focused on the Marines, and when she spoke, her voice came from speakers throughout the vessel. "You are the humans, the species that refuses to surrender. We're here to stop you," Foster said, raising his weapon. "You." cannot stop what has already begun. Our children are hungry, and your worlds will feed them. Even if you destroy me, others will come. Foster looked at his Marines, seeing the same determination in their eyes that he felt in his heart. Maybe, but you won't be around to see it. Back on the Nightborne, Morrison watched as explosions began to rock the HFY mothership. Garcia, what's Foster's status? They've reached the ship's core, Captain. But the vessel is beginning to destabilize. Morrison made the hardest decision of his military career. Signal Major Foster. Tell him to complete the mission. Deep inside the mothership, Foster received the message. He looked at his Marines, knowing what it meant. Torres, set the charges. We're going to make sure this thing never threatens anyone again. Chief Petty Officer Andrew Cole stepped forward with the demolition charges. Major, these charges will take out the entire ship, but the blast radius ... I know, Foster said quietly. Set them anyway. Cole nodded and began placing the charges. Around the Queen's chamber. The other Marines took defensive positions, knowing that the HFY would do everything to stop them. Charges set, Major, Cole reported. 30 seconds to detonation. Foster activated his communication system one last time. Captain Morrison, mission accomplished. It's been an honor serving with you. The explosion that followed could be seen from across the solar system. The HFY mothership, their queen, and Major Foster's Marine squad disappeared in a ball of light that outshone the local star on the Nightborne. Morrison stood in silence as he watched the explosion fade around him. His crew wept for their fallen comrades. Captain, Carter said softly, the remaining HFY ships are retreating. The battle is over. Morrison nodded but felt no joy in their victory. Signal the fleet. We've won this battle, but the war isn't over. There are more HFY out there. And they'll be back. Sir, Adams reported, I'm receiving a transmission from Admiral Parker. He says Foster's sacrifice has given us something invaluable. What's that? Now we know they can be killed. And more importantly, they know that humanity won't surrender, no matter the cost. Morrison looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere in that darkness more HFY fleets were preparing for war. But humanity had proven something today. They had shown that some things were worth dying for, and that the human spirit could not be consumed, no matter how hungry the enemy was. 6 months after the Battle of Proxima Station, the UES Nightborne led the largest fleet in human history toward the HFY homeworld. Captain Jake Morrison stood on his battle-scarred bridge, looking at the tactical display that showed over 1,000 human vessels moving in perfect formation. The ship that had once been a symbol of peaceful exploration was now a weapon of war. Captain, we're approaching the edge of the HFY home system, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Carter reported. Her voice was steady, but Morrison could see the tension in her shoulders. They all knew this would be the final battle. Morrison looked around his bridge at the crew who had become his family over the past months of warfare. Chief Engineer Kelly Adams had kept the ship running through dozens of battles. Lieutenant Amy Walsh had coordinated communications between hundreds of allied vessels. Commander Tony Garcia had become their expert on HFY tactics. Each of them bore the scars of war, but their determination had never wavered. Signal Admiral Parker, Morrison ordered. Tell him that the Nightborne is ready for the final assault. The main screen activated, showing Admiral Stephen Parker aboard the UES Retribution. Behind him, Morrison could see the bridge of the massive flagship, its crew preparing for what they all hoped would be the war's end. Captain Morrison, our long-range sensors have confirmed our worst fears. The HFY homeworld is already dead. Morrison felt his heart sink. Dead? They consumed it themselves. The entire planet is nothing but ash and toxic atmosphere. The enemy we've been fighting is the last remnant of their species. They destroyed their own world trying to survive. Dr. Nathan Ross appeared on the communication channel from his laboratory aboard the Nightborne. Captain, that explains why they've been so desperate. They're not just invading our space for expansion. They're fleeing the death of their own civilization. Morrison understood the horrible truth. They're refugees. Refugees who consume entire worlds to survive, Admiral Parker nodded grimly, which makes them more dangerous than any conqueror. They have nothing left to lose and nowhere else to go. If we don't stop them here, they'll continue consuming worlds until the entire galaxy is dead. The human fleet approached the Vexi home system, expecting to find a thriving alien civilization. Instead, they found a graveyard. The star was dying, its light dim and red. The planets that should have been green and alive were nothing but barren rocks floating in space. "My God," Carter whispered as she studied the sensor readings. They killed everything. Their own sun, their own planets, their own people. Morrison looked at the tactical display showing the remaining Vexi fleet. There were still hundreds of their ships, but they were clearly the survivors of a much larger force. How many of them are left? Approximately 2 million Vexi, Dr. Ross reported. The entire surviving population of their species. The moral weight of the situation settled on Morrison's shoulders. They were about to exterminate an entire species. But that species had already proven they would consume every living thing in the galaxy to survive. "Captain," Walsh announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the Vexi fleet. It's their leader." The main screen filled with the image of a Vexi different from the others they had encountered. This one was ancient, its gray skin marked, with scars and its black eyes filled with a sadness that seemed infinite. "I am Zarthik, last of the Vexi Council," the creature said in a voice like grinding stone. "You are the humans who refuse to die," Morrison stepped forward. "I am Captain Jake Morrison. We're here to end this war. There can be no end while my people hunger. We have consumed our own world, our own children, everything we ever loved. Still we hunger. We cannot stop what we have become." Morrison felt a chill run through him. "Then you understand why we can't let you continue. Yes, you have shown us something we had forgotten. You have shown us what it means to sacrifice for others instead of consuming them. Your Major Foster died to save people he had never met. We have not done such a thing in 1,000 years." The Vexi leader paused, his black eyes seeming to look directly at Morrison. "We are what you could become if you ever stop fighting. For each other and start fighting only for yourselves." Morrison understood. The Vexi were not evil. They were what happened when a species became so desperate to survive that they lost everything that made life worth living. "Captain," Carter said urgently, "the Vexi fleet is powering up their weapons. All ships' massive energy signatures." Detected, Morrison looked at the tactical display. The remaining Vexi ships were arranging themselves into a final attack formation. They were going to make one last attempt to break through the human fleet and reach the populated worlds beyond. "All ships, this is Admiral Parker. The enemy is preparing for their final assault. This is our last chance to stop them. For every world they've consumed, for every life they've taken, we end this now." Morrison activated the Nightborne's weapon systems. The ship's main gun, a prototype plasma cannon they had nicknamed the Roar, began to charge with energy. The weapon had been designed specifically to penetrate Vexi living armor. "Captain," Garcia reported, "the Vexi are breaking formation. They're scattering toward the populated systems." Morrison realized the terrible truth. They're not trying to win. They're trying to reach our colonies before we can stop them. Even if they die, they want to take as many of us with them as possible. The final battle began as the human fleet spread out to intercept the fleeing Vexi ships. Morrison watched as his friends and comrades engaged in desperate combat across the entire solar system. Carter, lock onto Zarthik's flagship. "If we can stop their leader, the others might surrender." Target locked, Captain. The Roar is fully charged." Morrison looked at the main screen one last time, seeing the ancient Vexi leader staring back at him. In those black eyes he saw not hatred, but relief. Zarthik wanted this to end as much as the humans did. "Fire!" Morrison ordered. The Roar erupted from the Nightborne's main gun, a beam of pure energy that cut through space like a sword of light. The blast struck the Vexi flagship and continued through it. the energy so intense that it punched completely through the ship and into the dying star beyond. The explosion that followed lit up the entire solar system. The Vex-High flagship disappeared in a ball of light that could be seen from neighboring star systems. The remaining Vex-High ships, seeing their leader destroyed, began to power down their weapons. "Captain," Walsh reported with amazement, "the surviving Vex-High ships are surrendering. The war is over." Morrison felt no joy in their victory. He looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere in the galaxy, there were other species who might one day face the same choice the Vex-High had faced, the choice between dying with honor and living as monsters. "Signal the fleet," Morrison said quietly. "The Vex-High who surrender will be taken to uninhabited worlds where they can live without consuming others." If such a thing is possible, Admiral Parker appeared on the screen. "Captain Morrison, the Galactic Coalition is already asking when humanity will return to our peacekeeping role." Morrison looked at his crew, at the scars on his ship, at the stars that now held the echoes of the roar that had ended the war. "Tell them that humanity has learned something important. Peace is only possible when someone is strong enough to protect it. We'll return to exploration and diplomacy, but we'll never again forget what we're capable of when everything we love is threatened." The Nightborne turned away from the dead Vex-High homeworld and began the long journey back to Earth. The war was over, but the galaxy had been forever changed. Humanity had shown that they could be both explorers and warriors, both diplomats and destroyers. The roar of their weapons had echoed through the silence of space, and every species in the galaxy would remember that sound. It was the sound of a people who refused to surrender, who would sacrifice everything to protect what they loved, and who would stand guard against the darkness no matter the cost. Morrison looked out at the stars one last time before heading to his quarters. Tomorrow they would begin the journey home. Tonight he would remember all those who had died to make that journey possible.